Hare Krishna.
Hare.
I welcome all of you to our Bhagavad Gita class. The objective of this class is to enable reading of the shlok, to understand the meaning of the shlok, and to help understand the basic philosophy of. We are on chapter 12, Bhakti Yoga or devotional service. And this chapter has got 4 sections. In the first 12.1, Arjun inquires who is better, a personalist or an impersonalist. From 12 to 2.27, Krishna explains about personalist versus impersonalist. From 8 to 12, that we covered in the last week, is about progressive stages of bhakti. And the last section is 13 to 12, which talks about qualities that endear one to Lord Krishna, right? And then we'll finish this class by the glories of chapter 12 from Padma Puran. So today, although we took the section 8 to 12 in the last class, but I would still continue with the same section 12, 8 to 12, right? So let us summarize what we read in the first 7 shlok. So the first shlok, Arjuna inquires, who is better, a personalist or a impersonalist? So who is a personalist? A personalist is a person who is a devotee who actually worships the personal form of the Krishna, and who is an impersonalist who worships the impersonal form, that is impersonal Brahma, the Brahma Jyoti, right? Now, Krishna replies in the second slok itself that the pure devotees of Krishna are the most perfect yoga. So Krishna is very clear that if you're a pure devotee, then among the different yogis that we know about, the Gyan Yoga, the Dhyan Yoga, the Karma Yoga, and the Bhakti Yoga, it is the pure Bhakti Yoga, not even your satters, but the someone who has achieved the highest Bhakti Yoga, they are the perfect Uttamam. They are the perfect yogis. Then he explains in the into third and fourth, he explains about the qualities of the impersonalist Brahma. He explains the process of the person who follows this one, and he explains what happens to the person who worships the impersonal Brahma. What is the destination of that? So if you look at the shlok, he says, Ye tvam arnideshyam अव्यक्तम परिपासते सर्वत्र गम अचिंत्यम च कूटस्थम achalam dhruvam, right? So these are the 8 qualities that Krishna talks about. It is aksharam is which is beyond the senses. Anirdeshyam, it is indefinite. It is avyaktam, which is cannot be manifested. Par upasate is someone who worships. Then he says sarvatra gam means it is all pervading. It is pervading everywhere. Then he says achintya means something which cannot be conceived. It is inconceivable. Then he says kutastha means it is unchangeable. It is unchangeable. Achalam, it is not movable. Achalam, so it is not movable. Dhruvam is it is fixed. So the impersonal Brahm is, these are the 8 qualities of impersonal Brahm. He explains, he qualifies that, and then he says the process that is followed by the people who worship impersonal Brahm. He says sanyam indriyam gramam sarvatra sambuddhaya te prapnuti mameva sarvabhuta hite rata. So here the 3 qualities he talks about is sanyam indriya gram. Sanyam is control. Sanyam is to control. What to control? Indriya. Indriya is your senses. So what do they do? What is the process they follow to achieve impersonal Brahm? They control their senses. And what does do a bhakta do? A bhakta. So no, a bhakti, impersonal worship, the person who worships the impersonal Brahm, they try to control their senses. But a devotee, he or she engages their senses in devotional service, in worshipping Krishna. But the person who is worshipping the impersonal Brahm, they try to control their senses. Then some buddhaya is equal in happiness and distress, in all opposite in all adverse situation, or which is in favorable condition, they are sambuddhya. They are always equal, someone. And they are sarvabhuta hite rata. Sarvabhuta means all event. Hite is to do good for them. Rata is involved in that. That's what they do. So these are the three processes they follow. They are trying to do good for all. They are sambuddhya, and they try to control their indriya. And then he says, and what happened? What is the destination of impersonal Brahm? He says, Te prapnuvanti mameva. They also achieve me. They also achieve me. Then what is the difference between a pure devotee and this? Because they are also, he says, they are the best yogis and they also achieve me. Then he says in the fifth stroke, he says, troublesome path of them. He says, yes, they achieve me, but they achieve me after many births. Because he says
The path is very
the path is very difficult. Because why it is difficult, he also explains that because we are having form, we have got form, so it is very easy for us to visualize and get engaged to something which is a form. We can get engaged to that, but then imagining and praying to something which is impersonal is very troublesome. And what happens after many births, they finally achieve me. So they have to really go through lots of birth before they can achieve. And then in the 6th and 7th shlok, he explains that bhakti, it is the simplest way to achieve me. And then he says, Ye tu sarvani karmani, mai sanyasma matpara, ananyena va yogena, mam dhyayate upasate. Upasate is worship. Those who worship me, how do they worship me? He qualifies Sarvani karmani sanyasya. Sarvani is all. Karmani is work. Sanyasa is give up. They give up all their work for whom? For me. And then what do? Matpara. Matpara is they are engaged with me. In which way? In which way they are engaged with him? Ananyenaiva yogena, with one pointed devotion, with one pointed devotion. And then yogena mam dhyayanta. The mam dhyayanta is they do what do you call it? They do meditation on me. They do meditation on me. And when they do that, then what happened? Then what happened to them? Teshaham. Teshaham means to all of them. Aham is I. Samuddharta. Samuddharta is deliver. I deliver them from what? Mrityu sansara sagarat. Sagar is ocean of birth and death. And not only he delivers that, he next line he qualifies how do he delivers. Na chirat partha, O Parth, O Arjun. Na chirat part means very quickly. Na chir is long, and na chira means very swiftly. I delivered them from the ocean of birth and death very swiftly. And then he says last word, Maya Vishesha Chetasam. And what they are doing, such people, what they are doing, Maya is to me, Avisheta is fixed. And what Chetasam means, their consciousness is always fixed on me. So that is what he explains in the 6th and 7th slokas. He says, but those who worship me, giving up all their activities unto me, and being devoted to me without deviation, engaged in devotional service, and always meditating upon me, having fixed their minds upon me, O son of Pritha, for them I am the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death. Right? So when you go for Bhakti Yoga, when you engage your senses in service of Krishna, then you don't have to worry. He will take care of you. He will take care of you. He says, he promises here that I am the swift deliverer. I will not delay. I will deliver. I will deliver you from the ocean of birth and death. Right? So this is what we had read in last class. And then we had started in the last class about progressive stage of Bhakti. So let's go to the shlok, 8th shlok. Mayeva man adatsva.
Mayeva mana adatsva.
Mayi buddhim niveshaya.
Mayi buddhim niveshaya.
Nivsishyasi mayeva.
Nivsishyasi mayeva.
At uddharvam na sanshaya.
Ata udvam na samshaya.
Mayeva man adatsva.
Mayeva mana adatsva.
Mayi buddhim niveshaya.
Mayi buddhim niveshaya.
Nivsishyasi mayeva.
Nivsishyasi mayeva.
At urdhavam na sanshaya.
Ata urdhvam na samshaya.
Mataji.
चलो
मय्येव मन आदत्स्व
Mayyeva man adatsva.
मयि बुद्धिं निवेशय
Mayi buddhim niveshaya.
निविष्यसि मय्येव
Nivasishyasi mayyeva.
अत ऊर्ध्वं मत् न संशय
At udham na sanchaya. So in the last class also we took this shlok. Today we will again continue with this shlok and we'll go a bit more detail in this shlok, right? So last time what we talked about, we talked about man. What is man? What is the function of the man? Is to the function of the man is to
Krishna Chintana. Krishna
Chin- yeah. But what does our mind do? Mind is always thinks. It desires. That is the function of a mind. Is to think and desire. That is a normal function of the mind. And what is the function of an intelligence?
It will do whatever the mind says.
Yeah, it normally does. If the intelligence is not under control, then it will do whatever the mind says. But normally, intelligence is the function of intelligence is to take decision. To take decision, what is right, what is wrong. So intelligence is supposed to be higher than mind. Intelligence, buddhi should control man. Intelligence should control mind. That is how it should be, right? So, but he says that when mind and intelligence, when intelligence and mind both are actually attached to me, then what will happen? Nivsishyasi mayeva. You will always live with me. You will always live with the Arduna Sanshaya. Do not doubt about it. Right? So let us read the translation. Just fix your mind upon me,
Just fix your mind upon me,
the Supreme Personality of Godhead,
Supreme Personality of Godhead,
and engage all your intelligence in me.
and engage all your intelligence in me.
Thus you will live in me,
Thus you will live in me,
always,
always,
without a doubt.
without a doubt.
Right? So, if we want to be with Krishna, not after our death, but even today, in our day-to-day life, the way we live in every day, if we are going to have all our senses serving Krishna, engaged in Krishna. How can we engage our senses in Krishna? It is not possible for us to only keep on chanting. It is not possible. All as we talked about earlier,
Other activities like making food for Krishna, doing
Everything for Krishna.
Everything.
Arpanam.
Absolutely. Right from the morning when you get up from the bed, whatever you drink milk, give it to Krishna and then drink. So let Krishna be just like for a mother, child is the center of the thing when child is there and take care of the child. Similarly, Krishna is the center. Whatever you are doing, do it for Krishna. Even when you are exercising, there is also for Krishna. Because when you are exercising, if you're not healthy, you cannot take care of Krishna. So you have to exercise. You have to sleep, because even if you sleep, that is also for Krishna. Because if you don't sleep properly and then you're tired, you can't work properly for Krishna. So all the thing that we do can be made Krishna conscious. Just before going to Krishna sleep, just pray to Krishna, say I'm going to sleep now, take care. Morning when you get up, thank Krishna for waking you. Who knows? Because we woke up next day, that is a big what do you call it? It is his blessings that we are able to get up next morning, and we have all things proper to So everything, just our day-to-day life. You don't have to do anything special for that. Just engage, just convert your day-to-day activity to Krishna. That is how you can convert all your. You can actually focus your mind and your intelligence to Krishna. And thoughts to Krishna. Everything we can do to Krishna. So last time we talked about what is full consciousness of Krishna, and that is what Krishna has explained in the 6th chapter. He has said, Yo mam pashyanti sarvatra, sarvame mai pashyanti, tasyaham na parshyami, na cha me parsyanti. He says, Yo mam, those who, mam, pashyanti, pashya means to see. Pashya means to see. Yo mam pashyanti sarvatra. Sarvatra means everywhere, they see me. Sarvam cha mai, and in all things. Sarvam means in all things. Cha mai pashati. They see me in it. If something is happening, it is because of Krishna. If nothing happened, it is also because of Krishna. So everything is because of Krishna. Tasyaham, to all those people, na prashyami means I am never lost. Sacha me na prashanti, and nor he is ever lost to me. Neither for that, because that person is always, whatever happens is all Krishna's blessings. That's what we talked about. So that is what is Krishna consciousness. You are living always in the with Krishna, right? And that we can do in a day-to-day life, yeah, when you are just engaging our senses in Krishna. And then we talked about the gopis of Vrindavan, who are actually staying with Krishna always, whether even when Krishna went away, in his memory they're spending their time. That is thinking about Krishna always, even when Krishna is away. So that is about the how your mind and intelligence is fixed to Krishna. And we talked about Madhavendra Puri and other things, right? Now, think about now. Let's go back a bit in our journey of Bhagavad Gita. In chapter 1 of Bhagavad Gita, what did we read? We saw that Arjun was confused. Arjun
Whether
was
they-
first all with all courage. He wanted to Krishna to take him in between both the forces, the Kauravas and Pandavas. And when Krishna took him there on the chariot, actually Arjun became, he was actually extremely
His mind
broken.
is always,
Yeah.
Bhishma is my tata.
Yes. So he was compassionate. He was extremely compassionate. He was wondering how can he kill all his teachers? How can he kill Drona? How can he kill Bhishma Pitama? Who is it then? So he was totally incompassionate, because his attachment to the bodily attachment of Arjun to his family members was coming out, to all his friends and relatives was coming out. It was all his bodily relations to his friends and relative. Then what happened? He says, how there'll be no enjoyment. If I kill everyone, there'll be no enjoyment. So what happens? Again, this shows the characteristics of Arjun, where he's again thinking from a bodily perspective. Because why do we want to achieve something? Why do we dress up so beautifully and go for a party? We want everyone to appreciate us. Wow, how beautiful you are looking, right? Now, why do we have, buy most expensive car? And that too, we take it on loan and then we drive. Why? Why do we buy a big house, and why we decorate it with so many things, so that people will come and they'll appreciate? So basically, in this bodily conception, what we do, whatever we do, we want to show off the thing. We
We are
feel
not getting anything.
we are not getting. We are just earning. We are working hard. We are earning money, and then we are spending, in buying lot of things which are actually useless. If you really think about it, they are of not much value. If what we don't need all those things, but we still work hard, we attain. Not that you don't do that, but that is how a general tendency or general materialistic life is, right? Where as soon as we feel that we are growing higher, we get more income, we spend more. Yeah. So that is basically what is it. That is, so Arjun says, how will I enjoy? Even if I win all this kingdom, what is the use? With whom I will enjoy this kingdom if everyone is killed? Then he says, sinful reactions, killing them, my own people. How much sin I will get, Krishna? How can I do that? And that is the ultimate, is in the 44th slok of first chapter, where Arjun says, Aho but mahat papam kartum vyavsite vayam. Yad rajya sukha lobhena hantum swajana muddaya. Arjun says, oh alas, imagine how much big Pap, what a great sin we are going to do. Vayam is we all. Oh Krishna, what a great sin we all are going to do.
We can go back.
Just because of the, for the greed of Rajya Sukh. Just because the greed for kingdom and happiness, we are going to kill our own people. So imagine how much attachment Arjun had with everything. And it is all at a bodily platform. Right? And then he says, it is better that I go and beg. Than actually killing the sons of Dhritarashtra. I'm also okay that sons of Dhritarashtra, they kill me when I'm standing without weapon. But at least what will happen, Krishna? I will get spared from doing such a big, ghastly sins. This is what Arjun said. And in the end, what he did? He actually put down his bow. He put down his bow and said, I am not going to fight. This is what happened in chapter 1 of Bhagavad Gita. And then what Krishna did? When after that Arjun surrendered to Krishna, and Krishna started giving knowledge to Arjun, stating that, explaining to him about the concept of body and soul, that we are not this body and we are soul. That is the Jnana Yoga, that you are not this body. So don't do the activity which is for your soul, not for your body. Then he talked about the karma, why we get this body, why do we suffer in this body, all those things he explained. And then he says that okay, then you can actually like nishkam karma, if you do that. Then he explains about the dhyana yoga. He talks about meditating on the super soul in the heart. And Arjun says, no, I cannot do that. And then he started talking about the bhakti yoga, right? And he explained that that everything is me, I am the supreme lord. And then he also showed his virat roop, saying you are not doing anything, it is already done. You have to just become a instrument in my hand, so that what you are going to do is not that you are doing. Don't think that it is already done. You are just instrument. And finally, when we'll finish Gita in the 18th chapter, Arjun, what happens when he completed the Gita? Arjun was convinced, and he knew that our job is not to enjoy our senses, but to work for the senses of the Lord.
Yeah.
And that is what is Bhakti Yoga. What is Bhakti Yoga? To get engaged with it. That is what in Bhagavad Gita Krishna has explained, that our main thing is to work for the senses to satisfy the master of the senses, Rishikesh. Who is Rishikesh? Master of the senses. Master of the senses is Krishna. Rishika means senses, and Isha means master. Rishikesh means master of senses, which is Krishna. So we should not. So our job is to serve the senses of the master of senses, which is Krishna. And that is what Arjun understood. And then he actually then started doing his dharma. His dharma is to fight. So we have to do our dharma duty with all our things surrounded with Krishna. That is what is Bhagavad Gita, that we don't have to work for our senses, satisfying our senses, but satisfy the senses of Krishna, right? That is what is Bhagavad Gita, right? Now, this one, Mayeva Man Aditsva. So there's a wonderful story. Which is based on this very shlok, and it's about a very, very famous devotee. So today I wanted to share that story with everyone, right? So let me start that story. This story is about a very great devotee called Yamunacharya, and he was in 10th century. He was in south of India. He was there, right? He was a king. He was actually a devotee, then he became a king, and then again he became a great devotee. So who was he? He was grandson of a great devotee called Nath Muni. He was a grandson of a great devotee called Nath Muni. His son was Ishwar Muni. And again, he was also a great devotee. And what he did, Ishwar Muni, he along with his wife went from south of India, went all the way to Vrindavan to see Vrindavan. And there they admired the Yamuna river a lot. They really went around Vrindavan, and he was so much, he enjoyed so much in Vrindavan that he was blessed by a child, and that child he called as Yamuna, on the name of river Yamuna. But unfortunately, Ishwar Muni had a very short life. He died. And when he died, the small boy who was born, he was actually taken care by his grandfather, who was Nath Muni. He was taken care by the grandfather. Now, Nath Muni he was a great devotee, and his job was only to spread the spiritual knowledge. When this Yamuna was 5 years old, Nath Muni had sent Yamuna to the Gurukul, and his guru was Bhashyacharya. His guru was Bhashyacharya. And at that time, Bhashyacharya was a very poor Brahmin, but he was an excellent teacher. He spent his time in all reading scriptures, and his Gurukul had all the kids. He used to teach them about the scriptures, and he used to do seva, Krishna seva. That is what his job was. Now, at that point of time, it was Pandya dynasty who was ruling the part of South India where this story happened. And in that dynasty, in that dynasty, there was a great king, but he had a pandit called Kolahal. And this Kolahal, he was a scholar, but he was not a devotee. Now, what is the difference between a scholar and devotee? The scholars are, they have a lot of knowledge, and because they have a lot of knowledge, you will see them to be extremely proud of their knowledge. They'll be extremely arrogant. They'll be extremely arrogant. So normally you'll see when someone is very, very, intelligent, very normal characteristics that you find them. You will not see them to be humble, but they are proud of knowledge. They are very arrogant. Because of that proud, they are very arrogant. And if you're a devotee, you will find that normally such people are humble, right? So Kolahal was extremely proud, extremely arrogant, and the king of he actually admired Kolahal a lot because of his knowledge. And what Kolahal did was he somehow convinced king that at that point of time there used to be a lot of discussions between various people, and he used to call all the learned scholars from the nearby areas or across India or across country, and they both used to get engaged in conversation. Yeah, there used to be a knowledge, a discussion, debates about some various topics. And always Kolahal used to win. And the more Kolahal used to win, the king used to be more happy with Kolahal. And finally, Kolahal made a law. He put a law that anyone who gets defeated by him has to pay taxes to him. And if they fail to pay taxes, then that person can be subjected to death. That person can be subjected to death. So imagine his how arrogant or proud, cruel he was. But then what happened was, similarly, one day, one of the messenger of Kolahal reached the Gurukul of Bhashyacharya. So Bhashyacharya had actually was also called by Kolahal, and he had lost from Kolahal. So this messenger reached the Gurukul, and at that point of time, Bhashyacharya had gone out with his other disciple, and only Yamuna was there at home. So he asked that where is Bhashyacharya? He asked him so rudely. So he said, yeah, what is the matter? He says, what your teacher, does he want to get death sentence by Kolahal? Huh? Why has he not paid taxes since last 2 years? And don't you know that if he doesn't pay taxes, he has lost to my teacher Kolahal, and if he doesn't pay taxes, he will be killed. Now, Yamunacharya, he was just 12 years old, and he was like extremely polite, humble, but looking at the arrogant behavior of the messenger, he said, what? My Acharya got defeated by Kolahal. Who's Kolahal? He says, oh, don't you know Kolahal, he's a great scholar, and everyone gets defeated. Even your teacher had got defeated by him. He says, okay, I can defeat him. Now, listening to that, the messenger was like, extremely shocked. He says, yes, my teacher will not give any tax. I can defeat Kolahal. You go and tell him that, if he wants, I can come and defeat him. Now, listening to that, the messenger went back and told Kolahal that, in the Gurukul, I found a 12-year-old boy, and he's challenging you. Now, Kolahal was sitting with the king. So the king also they both started laughing. And said, maybe because he's a child, he doesn't understand. So why don't you do one thing? Why don't you go to the child and ask him to come now? So the messenger went back to Yamuna and said, Yamuna, the king has asked you to come now, and he wants you to have a debate with Kolahal. He says, if the king wants me to come and have a debate, then I'm not going to go there. He should have sent me palanquin. He should have sent some 100 soldiers, and he should have sent people with drums. I cannot go like this and enter a debate. Now the messenger went back and told this to the king. Now, listening to this, the king was all the more amazed, and the queen was also sitting there. They both started laughing. He said, really, a 12-year-old boy saying like this, that the king has to send all these things? Then the king and queen became all the more inquisitive. They said, okay, now let me go and send that. So what the king did, he sent a great palanquin, and he sent hundreds of soldiers and a big musical party to go and bring the Yamuna to the palace. Now here the king and queen started discussing in private. So the queen said, I think this is not an ordinary child, and I believe that this child is going to defeat Kolahal. King started laughing. How can you say that? How can you think that Kolahal can be defeated by a small child, 12-year-old child, small child? It because this child doesn't know, so he must be having fun. And I want to see how that I want to enjoy that whole dealings. That's why I'm asking him to come. So Queen said, no, 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 no. I can bet this child is going to defeat Kolahal. So can we have a bet? So the king was like, we bet? He says, Queen said, yeah, yeah, I'm ready to bet. If this child defeats Kolahal, then I'm ready to be the servant of your maid servant.
Maid servant of?
Maid servant of his maid servant.
Oh.
She says, I'm ready to be the maid servant of your servant. Now king was surprised. He says, if you can go, if you can take that bet, then I am ready to give half my kingdom to the child if he wins. Now this was a private conversation, and they came back. In the meantime, what happened? This news had gone throughout the place, and everyone was watching the young Yamuna taken in the palanquin to the palace. And they were saying the people who had got defeated by Kolahal, who did not like Kolahal, they were saying now, this is like the Vaman Dev has come, in the Vaman Dev has come in the form of Vishnu has come in the and in the 3 feet he had taken all the things. So this is now this guy is going to defeat Kolahal and save all of us. Some people say, oh, this guy, those who are with Kolahal, they say, what can he do? He cannot do anything. Anyway, finally he reached the court. Now, once he reached the court, as soon as he was entering the court, Kolahal started saying, Alavandar, Alavandar. So, Alavandar actually means, here comes the great conqueror. Here comes the great conqueror. And Queen also started repeating, Alavandar, Alavandar. So what happened? So that was more like an insult. Kolahal was, here comes the great conqueror, here comes the great conqueror. He started saying, and Queen also echoed, Alavandar, Alavandar. And now when Yamuna came, then what happened was, Yamuna came and he sat, and then the debate started. And then Kolahal, thinking that he is a small boy, started asking some basic questions. Now, it started, and this guy was like no other, he was like promptly replying anything he was asking. Now Kolahal went to the next level, to the next level, to the next level. Whatever level he went, this guy was brilliant, and he kept on replying. And then in the end he said, why are you asking me such easy questions? Why don't you tell me something of essence? You are just talking to me about Sanskrit grammars and other things, but why don't you ask me something, something which is difficult? Now Kolahal got irritated, because from his perspective, he was asking actually difficult question, which Yamuna found very simple. So he says, okay, if you think I'm asking you easy questions, why don't you question me? Why don't, it's your turn now. Yamuna said, it's fine, I'm okay. I will ask only 3 questions to you. I'm going to make statements, and you have to refute the statement I'll make. Got it? I will ask you statements. I'll ask you 3 statements, and you have to refute it. Whatever I'm refuted is, whatever I'm saying is wrong. You have to prove that whatever I'm saying is wrong. He said, yeah, okay, go ahead. So the first question he asked is, your mother is not a barren woman. Your mother is not a barren woman. Now Kolahal thought, I am her son sitting here, then how can she be a barren woman? How can I refute this question? My mother is definitely not a barren woman. I'm her son. So how can I refute? So he was like a bit perplexed. He started thinking, but he said, what sort of question are you asking? He said, yeah, refute this statement. He says, okay, after a lot of thoughts, he says, then all the people who were with Kolahal say, oh, this is not a question, this is not a question. He says, no, this is a statement, you have to refute. Okay, fine, go to the next question. So the second question he asks is, our king is the most pious and virtuous person in the land. our king is the most pious and virtuous person in the land. It means he has to prove that the king is not pious and not virtuous. Now, how can he do that? He says, what do you want to do? Our king is a pious and virtuous person in the land. What are you trying to do? Is this a question? Is this a statement? Can you refute? He says, no, my third statement is still pending. He says, okay, tell me the third statement. He says, the queen is the most chaste and virtuous lady. Prove that the queen is the most chaste and virtuous lady. And now Kolahal was at the peak of his anger. Queen is chaste. How? He says, what are you trying to do? Do you want me to say that the king is not pious and the queen is not chaste and get my head cut? Huh? This is nothing. These are not statements to be refuted. He says, I challenge you. Can you refute? Yamuna says, yes. Now everyone is eagerly waiting to hear how can Yamuna challenge this, which is like, his mother is a barren lady, which is difficult because the son is sitting in front. So, okay, prove me. And Kolahal gave in. And then Yamuna very, very smartly said, as per Manu Samhita. What is Manu Samhita? Manu Samhita is basically the law book of mankind. That is the law book of mankind. Manu Samhita is the law book of mankind. And that is what is the followed at the Sanatan Dharma, right? So Yamuna said, as per Manu Samhita, if a lady has got only one son, then she's considered to be a barren lady. So, as per Manu Samhita, although you are the son of your mother, but you are the only one son. So, your mother is barren. Kept quiet. He says, okay, what about the second one? He says, as per Manu Samhita, a king is basically takes 1/6 portion of the pious of all his subjects. 1/6 portion of the pious deeds that the subjects do, that is actually taken by the king. It's given to the king. Similarly, the king also takes the 1/6 portion of the sins that is done by the subjects. So in that case, the king cannot be most pious because it's Kalyug and a lot of people must be doing some sinful activity. So 1/6 of the sins of that person has come to king. So he cannot be the most pious.
He refuted that.
Now everyone was quiet, and it was, those who were against Kolahal, they all stood up and started clapping, like, okay. And the third one was, the queen is the most chaste and virtuous lady. Now, how can you refute this? Then he said, as per Manu Samhita, the king is a representative of 6 demigods. King is a representative of 6 devata. They are Agni, Chandra, Kubera. So there are 8 representatives. It means the queen is married to all those 8 demigods. So the queen is not chaste because she is married to 8. Yeah. So now after seeing everyone, and the king got up and king started clapping and said he was highly impressed by Yamuna, and he said, now I can say that Kolahal has been defeated. Now Kolahal wanted to give you death sentence. So I give you the rights to give whatever punishment you want to Kolahal, and you have won the one against Kolahal. Because Yamuna was a great devotee, he said, okay, I'll forgive him, let him go. And he forgave Kolahal, and that is how he got saved now. Then what happened is, immediately, and the queen also started saying, Alavandar, Alavandar. Now king said, I had promised the queen that I'll give my half kingdom to Yamuna. So today I announce that half of my kingdom belongs to Yamuna. Now, as soon as he said that, very soon the neighboring kings, they said, okay, now, so he became the ruler of half the Pandya kingdom. And now all the neighboring kings, they thought he's just a 12-year-old child. He doesn't know much about how to run a kingdom. So they started planning an attack on his kingdom. But in the meantime, what happened? The spies came and informed the Yamuna about it. And Yamuna in turn actually declared war against them, and also he won against all of them. So his kingdom actually got all the more expanded, and now he became a great famous king, and he became living a very very luxurious life, enjoying the wealth, enjoying the pleasures of a king. And what happened? He became very strong, he became very wealthy, he became very influential, and in the process what happened? He forgot Krishna, and he forgot the devotional service. He was involved only in enjoying his life. And now now he has grown up from 12 years. He has been working, he has been ruling, and now he's around 35 years old. Yeah. Then what happened? Nath Muni, who was his grandfather, who was his grandfather, he was very ill. So he called his
Grandson.
his disciple, his most confident disciple. His name was Rama Mishra. His name was Rama Mishra, and he said, "See, I have done everything in my life. My life was to spread the knowledge of scriptures. I have done that. I have done my bhakti. The only thing I'm repenting now is that my grandson Yamuna, he has gone into the material world and he has forgotten the Krishna. He is my grandson, and I am not able to do anything about it." So he entrusted his disciple Rama Mishra that, "Can you do me a favor and bring him back to the line of bhakti?" So from bhakti he had became a great king. And now then what happened? Rama Mishra promised his guru that he will do that. Now after a few years, Rama Mishra thought how to do it. He actually went to meet Yamuna. At that point of time, Yamuna was around 35 years old. Now when he wanted to see Yamuna, he saw that there was a huge queue with all kings and noblemen who are standing in line to meet Yamuna. So where is the chance of a saint? And Rama Mishra was also a sannyasi. So where is a chance for sannyasi to stand in the line and meet king? So he thought, I must think of something else to do that. Now this Rama Mishra, apart from being a sannyasi, he was also a very good Ayurvedic doctor. And he saw near the kingdom there was a grass called Tuluvalai. Tuluvalai was actually grown near the palace, and this Tuluvalai sag is supposed to be extremely good for health. It actually takes the person to the mode of goodness. So what he did, he thought of a plan. He said, okay, he took some Tuluvalai weeds, sag, and he went to the cook of the king. He approached the cook, and luckily the cook was also knowledgeable about the sag. He said, "This is a very very good herb. Why don't you offer this to king every day?" Now the cook luckily was also very knowledgeable about the herbs. He was very happy to see this Tuluvalai's herbs, and he said, "How much should I pay?" He says, "No, don't pay me anything. It is just a gift for the king, because I admire and love the king a lot. So I want to give him as a gift. So why don't you give this to why don't you cook something delicious thing for the king?" Now what happened? Every day he used to do that, and every day he used to bring this Tuluvalai and give it to the cook, and the cook used to make it cook about it and give it to the king, and always used to tell that, and the king started liking this herb so much that he started every day enjoying, and by this months and months passed. Now because of the effect of this Tuluvalai herb also, now this king also started moving into the mode of goodness. It's from a passion, which is a natural quality of a king. He also, his mind started being peaceful, and he started becoming. So one day what happened? Now every day the cook used to come and tell to Rama Mishra that the king really loves the thing, and I mean he really enjoys this particular vegetable. Finally one day what Rama Mishra did, he was waiting for that day. He did not come to the palace. Now that day this herb was not there on his plate. So the king inquired, "Where is the herb?" So the cook said, today the person did not come to give. He said, who is the person who comes to give? He says, there's someone who really admires you a lot. So every day he comes and gives me this and go. Together, why you didn't tell me about it? He says, yeah, because he never told me, but he every day comes and gives this for you. He says, I want to meet him. He says, okay, next time when he'll come, I'll tell him that. So next day again when he came, Rama Mishra, he said, King wanted to meet you. He said, fine. But so he was ready to meet the king, but he says, one condition. I want to meet the king only in private. There should be no one. So then Rama Mishra got a private time with king. Now, when he met king, he said, he introduced himself. He says, I am the disciple of your grandfather Natha Muni. I am the disciple of your grandfather Nath Muni, and I have come to tell you something. He says, is it? What? He says, I have come to tell you that your grandfather has expired, and he has left a huge, wealth for you, a huge wealth for you. So he says, is it? And you are so kind that after you are such a kind person that you're coming all the way from there to tell me about this, that my grandfather has left such a huge, why you didn't take it up? He says, no, because it belongs to you, so I wanted to give this to you. He says, okay, fine, then come, if it is there, I'm tomorrow, let me take all the soldiers and we will take horses and we'll go. He says, no. You cannot get the wealth like that. There is a condition he has put. It should be, no one should accompany us. And we'll have to walk from here to somewhere in Madurai. We have to walk from here and we have to go to the wealth. And this wealth is protected by 7 walls. And there are 2 rivers you have to cross to get this wealth. And there is a serpent which is protecting this wealth. And there's a demon who comes and visits this wealth every 12 years. So this wealth is like, you cannot just go like that. You have to walk, but it is huge wealth. So the king agreed. He says, okay, give me just time. I will set up everything here and I'll walk with you. And then what he did, he made all the arrangements to get the kingdom managed, and he started walking with Rama Mishra to get the great wealth. Now, on the way to get the great wealth, what Rama Mishra was doing, he was singing the verses of Bhagavad Gita, and he was singing the verses of Bhagavad Gita. He used to do his chanting. He was, from he started, and this king who was following Rama Mishra, he was listening to that, and he started remembering his previous lifetime. He started remembering the time he was in his gurukul with his acharya, the time he had spent with his grandfather, and all these things happened, and he was like, as the day was passing and they were walking, the more he was with Rama Mishra, because Rama Mishra himself was a great saint. And it is said that when you are with a great saint, you even with spending some time with the great saint, you get purified. When he was such a great saint, Yamuna would have got really purified in that 12 days that he was traveling with Rama Mishra. And on the 12th day, he was singing this 12th chapter on which we are today. And on the 12th day, when this particular verse, the 8th verse of Bhagavad Gita was spoken, which is, speak the verse, tell the verse. Mayeva man adhatsva, mayi buddhim niveshaya, nivsishyasi mayeva, at urdhavam na sanshaya. Fix your mind upon me. Engage all your intelligence in me. Thus you will live in me, always without doubt. And listening to this shlok, Yamunacharya actually, he bowed down, he started crying and he started pleading Rama Mishra, that Rama Mishra, please become my guru. I just want your mercy. Make me your disciple and let me also again lead the life that I was living, the beautiful life I was leading. I don't want any wealth that my grandfather would have kept for me. You can take that wealth, The only thing I want from you is make me your disciple. Rama Mishra said, no, no, no. I can make you my disciple, but I have to give you this wealth, because this wealth is what
Belongs to you.
belongs to you, and Natha Muni has specifically asked me to hand it over to you. So he says, okay, fine. So that's why he continued, but fine, I will make you my disciple, and please come with me. And finally, he took him to Srirangam.
Srirangam.
And finally, he took him to Srirangam. And Srirangam it's covered by 7 walls. You have to, in that temple is covered by, it is the biggest temple of India.
That's
Srirangam is the biggest temple of India, Ranganath temple. It is covered by 7 walls, and it is the 2 rivers. The Kaveri river looks like it is making a necklace of Srirangam. It is protected by the Sheshnag, which is a snake, and Vibhishan comes and visits it every 12 years. The demon comes and visits it the 12 years. So when Yamunacharya reached that place, he saw Vishnu, he started crying, and he said, I don't want anything, and I just want this. So this is how, and then he became from Yamuna, he again became Yamunacharya. Now, before I continue this, I will tell you the story, why Vibhishan comes to visit it every 12 years, and what is the story of Sri Ranganatha. So Sri Ranganatha, the thing is, actually the deity which is there in Sri Ranganatha is what was actually worshipped in the Solar dynasty, the ancestors of Solar dynasty, Rama's dynasty. So the ancestors of Rama, they used to worship the deity of Sri Ranganath. And what happened when once when Dashrath, it was someone had asked Dashrath to give this deity, so he had refused. And then when after winning Sri Lanka, after getting Sita back, when Vibhishan also came to Ayodhya, and at that point of time, while actually giving him farewell, Vibhishan asked for this Ranganath, and Ram gave it to him. And while coming back, the only condition was, he says, I will go with you, but you should not keep it here, keep anywhere. And when he was crossing Srirangam, he had to, it was the nature's call, and he had to actually put the thing down, and he kept thing down and went for the nature's call. When he came back, he could not lift the deity again. But he says, so this is the only temple in India which is where the deity is facing south. Everywhere the deity is facing east. Normally, all our deities will be facing east, but this is the only temple in India where the deity is facing south, because the deity blessed Vibhishan that because you are my great devotee, I will be seeing you from the south. So this is how the Srirangam, the history of the Srirangam temple is there. And Natha Muni had given this greatest wealth against whatever material world. This was the greatest wealth, and Yamuna took this wealth. And when Yamuna took this wealth from his and he became a disciple of Rama Mishra. Why Yamunacharya is very, very important, and why this devotee is very, very important? We all have heard the name of Ramanujacharya, right? We all have heard the name of Ramanujacharya. Ramanujacharya is more of a responsible for spreading Sri Vaishnavism. There are 4 Vaishnavism, and the Sri Vaishnavism is actually Ramanujacharya is associated. Yamunacharya is the one who actually picked Ramanujacharya for this purpose. So Yamunacharya was the one who had picked Ramanujacharya for this purpose, right? So this was the story of the great story of devotee Ramanujacharya. And since this shlok and this chapter is very, very linked to his life thing, I wanted to share this story with all of you today.
Very nice.
Yeah. So that was the intention. That's the reason why I actually took this shlok again. And maybe we can quickly go through all the other shlok and finish this chapter, right? So now, 8th chapter, we say, Krishna says, how can you live with me even without in this life itself? If you put your mind and you put your intelligence on me, you can always live with me even in this life. You don't have to wait for you don't have to wait for anything else, right? Now let's read the 9th shlok. अथ चित्तं समाधातुम्
अथ चित्तं समाधातुं
न शक्नोषि मयि स्थिरम्
न शक्नोषि मयि स्थिरम्
अभ्यासयोगेन ततो
अभ्यासयोगेन ततो
माम् इच्छाप्तु धनञ्जय
माम् इच्छाप्तुं धनञ्जय
अथ चित्तं समाधातुम्
अथ चित्तं समाधातुं
न शक्नोषि मयि स्थिरम्
न शक्नोषि मयि स्थिरम्
अभ्यासयोगेन ततो
अभ्यासयोगेन ततो
माम् इच्छाप्तुं धनञ्जय
माम् इच्छाप्तुं धनञ्जय अथ चित्तं समाधातुं
अथ चित्तं समाधातुम्
न शक्नोषि मयि स्थिरम्
न शक्नोषि मयि स्थिरम्
अभ्यासयोगेन ततो
अभ्यासयोगेन ततो
माम् इच्छाप्तुं धनञ्जय
माम् इच्छाप्तुं धनञ्जय. So Krishna says, Ath chittam samadhatum na shaknoshi mai sthiram. In case, if in chit means in your mind and intelligence, in your chit, samadhatum, if you are not able to attach your mind and intelligence, na shaknoshi, not able to do on me sthiram, fixed. If you are not able to do on me fixed, then what you should do? Abhyas yogena tato. Then you do follow the regulative principles of bhakti yoga. And what you should do while following? Mam ikchaptu, desire for me. Iksha is desire. Iksha is desire. Mam, of me. Aptu means to prapt, to get. Do it, Dhananjay, O Arjun, do it by desiring to get me. If you follow the regulative principle, and what is the regulative principle? Rise up early in the morning, take bath, go to temple, chanting, worshipping the deity for flowers, prasadam, reading Bhagavad Gita, Sankirtan, Sadhu Sangha, all of these things if we do, then we are following the regulatory principles of Bhakti Yoga, right? So then you do that. Let's read the translation. My dear Arjun, O winner of wealth, if you cannot fix your mind upon me without deviation, then follow the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga. In this way, develop a desire to attain me. Then we go to the 10th shlok. Abhyasepya samarthosi
अभ्यासेऽप्य समर्थोऽसि
मत् कर्म परमो भव
मत्कर्मा परमो भव
मदर्थम अपि कर्माणि
मदर्थम् अपि कर्माणि
कुर्वन् सिद्धम् अवाप्स्यसि
कुर्वन् सिद्धिम् अवाप्स्यसि
अभ्यासेऽप्य असमर्थोऽसि
अभ्यासेऽप्य असमर्थोऽसि
मत्कर्म परमो भव
मत्कर्मा परमो भव
मदर्थम अपि कर्माणि
मदर्थम् अपि कर्माणि
कुर्वन् सिद्धिम् अवाप्स्यसि
कुर्वन् सिद्धिम् अवाप्स्यसि
अभ्यासे अभ्यासक्तोऽसि
अभ्यासेऽप्य समर्थोऽसि
मत्कर्म परमो भव
मत्कर्म परमो भव
मदर्थमपि
मदर्थम अपि कर्माणि
कुर्वान् सिद्धिम् अवाप्स्यति
Kurvan siddhim apyasasi. So he says, if you cannot practice the regulation of Bhakti Yoga, then just work for me. And because by working for me, you will come in the perfect stage. Working for me, we talked about last time, is direct and indirect. Direct is direct giving seva to Krishna, that is distributing books of Krishna, preaching for Krishna, celebrating festivals of Krishna, supporting in Yathrata for Krishna, doing Yathrata for Krishna, making garlands for Krishna. If you can't do that, then from whatever you are earning, give some money, donate some money to the temple or to whoever are doing all these, so engage in doing Krishna conscious activity, so that that way you are indirectly supporting the Krishna, right? That is what he says here. If you cannot practice the regulations of Bhakti Yoga, then just try to work for me. Because by working for me, you will come to me to the perfect stage. 11th shlok. Athaidapya ashaktosi kartum madhyogam ashritah sarva karma phala tyagam tatah kuru yatatmavan.
तथा कुरु यथात्मवान्
अथैदप्य अशक्तोऽसि
अतैतदप्यसक्तोऽसि
कर्तुं मदयोगमाश्रितः
कर्तुं मद्योगम् आश्रितः
कर्मफलं त्यागं
सर्वकर्म फलत्यागं
ततः कुरु यथात्मवान्.
ततः कुरु यथात्मवान्.
If you cannot even work for me, then what you do? Whatever karma you are doing, whatever activity, all your activity that you are doing, the fruits of that activity try to denounce it, try to give up that. Because by doing that, you will purify yourself. And the more you are purified, you will be able to understand Krishna and Bhakti Yoga. So it's very, very important that start getting, start renouncing the fruits of your activity. Right? And the last slok. श्रेयो हि ज्ञानम अभ्यास
श्रेयो हि ज्ञानम् अभ्यास
ज्ञानात् ध्यानं विशिष्यते
ध्यानात् ध्यानं विशिष्यते
ध्यानात् कर्मफल त्यागास्
ध्यानात् कर्मफलत्यागात्
त्यागात् शान्तिरनन्तरम्.
त्यागात् शान्तिरनन्तरम्.
Mataji.
श्रेयो हि ज्ञानम् अभ्यास
श्रेयो हि ज्ञानम अभ्यासात्
ज्ञानात् ध्यानं विशिष्यते
ज्ञानात् ध्यानं विशिष्यते
ध्यानात् कर्मफलत्यागात्
ध्यानात् कर्मफल त्यागात्
त्यागात् शान्तिरनन्तरम्.
त्यागात् शान्तिरनन्तरम्. If you cannot take to this practice, if you cannot take to this practice,
Practice.
If you cannot take to this practice,
then engage yourself in the cultivation of knowledge.
then engage yourself in the cultivation of knowledge.
Better than knowledge,
Better than knowledge,
however, is meditation.
however, is meditation.
And better than meditation
And better than meditation
is renunciation of the fruits of action.
is renunciation of the fruits of action.
For by such renunciation,
For by such renunciation,
one can attain peace of mind.
one can attain peace of mind.
Let us now chant Hare Krishna. We'll finish the class now.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna.